Welcome, Hogan.
It's great to be with you. And I had a good conversation with Newt Gingrich about the op-ed he placed last week about the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, understanding no one knows that position better than Newt Gingrich. So it's always
Yeah.
nice to have his opinion and
Yeah.
praise for that
And
matter.
where was his op-ed piece?
That's a great question. I think it ran in Fox.com, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
But it was great.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. And again, Hogan and I will run through the news and then we'll take your questions. And we might have a surprise guest. Can't say who it is, but we might have a surprise guest. Hogan, it's
I didn't agree
someone.
to that.
Oh no, you'll like if this person shows up, you'll be delighted. Speaking of D, you deconstruct, you demystify, and you delineate the Trump culture as well as anyone I know. I'll tell you another thing I talked about with Newt, which I would have loved for you to have been on. We talked about how people who think Trump is dumb are ironically themselves dumb because you may think he's the most evil person in the world, but he's not dumb. And
Nope.
Newt and I kind of broke down the different ways Trump is a genius, including he understands people. If you called Trump right now and said, "What are Mark Halperin's vulnerabilities? What are Mark Halperin's interests? How could we manipulate Mark Halperin?" Trump could answer like that. And I don't mean to flatter myself. In fact, just the opposite. He doesn't really know me all that well, but he is so instinctive about people. He understands the media better than any president I've ever covered.
Yep.
And he can have a conversation about one thing and be gaming out three other things he needs to solve at the same time. These are just some of the things Newt and I listed, which is like 30% of the list. I say again, if you think Trump is an idiot, if you think Trump is an evil, if you think Trump espouses really unpopular things, if you think Trump makes mistakes all the time, then you should realize, well, he must be a genius to get elected president twice, being that horrible a person. And he is. So you can call him an evil genius if you want, but he is a genius. And I told Newt, Hogan, I'll let you in a minute. I'm just doing my monologue now, but I'm glad you're here. I told Newt, I said, literally, I've lost friends, very bright people. Most of my friends are, I'd say, above average intelligence, just by fluke. I've lost friends who I've said who've never met Trump, and they say to me, and coincidentally, they're all liberals, and they'll say Trump's a moron, and I'll say Trump is smarter than you, and they'll say I will never be friends with you again. How could you say that? And what I say to some of them, it really pisses them off. I say, okay, forget how good he is at politics. Trump made $1 billion. I said, now, yes, his father was a millionaire, but his father wasn't a billionaire. I said, I'll give you as much money as Donald Trump's father gave him, and you go make $1 billion. And by the way, he did it basically selling nothing. He just sold his name. So anyway, Hogan, welcome in. You can talk about Trump genius, and then we'll do the news.
Thank you very much. And you're right. I had somebody come up on the street to me one time back when I was in the administration, similar claim that your friends, your liberal elite friends, Mark,
Yeah,
make to you. But this
yeah.
person said, my mom told me if I ever met somebody in the Trump administration to ask him this question. He said, I'm a Trump fan. My mom wants to know, is he as dumb in real life as he appears on television? And I said, well, let me ask you this. Is your mom a billionaire? And he goes, no. And I said, well, I know a lot of people who aren't billionaires who are stupid. I don't know any billionaire who's dumb.
Yeah,
And he kind of looked at me funny and I said, thanks, and just kind of
yeah.
walked off
There you go.
because it's obvious his ability to read people and work people is something like I've never seen before. And to watch him do it with foreign leaders, which I got to see all the time up close and personal, and to see the beads of sweat and the white knuckles from like the John Boltons or the Pompeos of the world in these conversations to be like, what is happening here? And then he'd come over the top with some incredible joke and the whole room would fall apart laughing. And then the deal started to get done. Then they started working on stuff. He would try and gauge and see where that particular leader was on a topic. And the DC decorum, the erudite, mentality of these folks, while probably there's a time and a place for some of it, and it's worked in the past, it doesn't work now. And that's not who Donald Trump is. So to see him, some of it's the weave, some of it's other things, but to work these people over, they don't even realize they're being worked. And they
Exactly.
don't realize what they've just given away,
Yeah,
something they didn't want to give away in the first place, but
yeah.
they did it.
And I'll say this. You could read every New York Times story and Washington Post story ever written about Donald Trump, and not one of them will even hint that he's a smart person. Not one.
In fact, it's the opposite.
Exactly. You could read last story. Bill Clinton, genius. Barack Obama, genius. Now, not a lot of stories about Joe Biden or George W. Bush, genius, although one of them is very smart. Won't say which. But Donald Trump, as you said, opposite. If you read the Washington Post, New York Times, if you never knew anything about Donald Trump and you read the Washington Post, New York Times, you say the United States has elected a moron as president. But it's not true. In fact, he's a genius. Okay. In fact, some Washington Post reporters read a book, A Very Stable Genius, but they didn't mean it. It was like meant to be like sarcastic and mocking.
Sure.
Now, very stable, they had a point there in terms of mocking, sarcastic. Hey, do you like that conversation? Well, you can be part of the Two-Way community. Join us live for interactive conversations like no other. Go to tway.tv. You can also watch anytime. Hit the subscribe button and watch our Two-Way clips and full episodes whenever your time allows.